call to order the public hearing to receive input on the fiscal year 2016 school budget priorities and budget work session. And we'll ask Mrs. Overby to make a roll call.
Here.
Dr. DeVault.
Here.
Ms. Landry. Ms. Maddox.
Here.
Mr. Milner. Dr. Stanhope.
Here.
And Mr. Zane.
Here.
The first part of the agenda tonight, excuse me, is a budget work session, and Dr. Cotton has a few bits of background for us, I think.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Don't have a lot to share at this point. You know, I did share the priorities that we received from the schools, from central office, as well as board members. I shared those at the last meeting. Since our last meeting, we did have a budget roundtable where we had some attendance there. Wanted to just share a little bit of the feedback that I've received. It was more related to the salary scales. If you remember, we were looking at the initial 1% across the board in year one, and then year two looking at adjusting the scale for the second half of the scale, really 15 years and above. And of course, Dr. Stanhope mentioned at that time that we should look at applying that 1% towards the upper half of the scale, which certainly right now we're in the process of working the math on how that would look. But I will tell you that at the last roundtable meeting, there was some feedback shared about the top of the scale, in particular folks who are at the top of the scale and have not received that step that's at the top of the scale, because we have not done step increases for the last, I'd say, three years. So because step increases, we have not been able to afford to do that. So, but I just wanted to share the feedback that concerns about the top of the scale. These are the folks who are wanting to go to that next step, the year 28 and above, which is a significant increase for them, but they haven't over the last several years because we have not done step increases. And typically we have not done step increases for one group and not the whole group. And we have not done a step increase probably 3 or 4 years, I would say. So I just wanted to provide you that feedback. I've also been working with my staff to look at priorities. You know, there's a very long list of things that I've shared with you from the schools, from the school board, from central office and the departments, and we've been trying to work on priorities. I'm going to want to work with the board on those same priorities at our February board meeting. We do have a work session scheduled. So I want to spend some time working with the board on getting your priorities on those different items, because as I've said before, we will not have the funding to do all of the things that we want to do. So we need to make sure that we have clear direction on what are the priorities as we build the budget, and when we have to make cuts, for example, if we don't get any additional funding and those kinds of things, we'll want to be able to do that, you know, based on feedback that I've received from the board. So we'll be doing that at the February meeting. I also want to tell you that I've been meeting with the advisory groups. We've had to reschedule the teacher advisory group because of snow, or not snow, but weather, ice related. But I did meet with the classified advisory group today. I'm meeting with the student advisory group next week, and I've rescheduled the teacher advisory, and I'm gathering feedback from those groups. And I will be able to share some of that feedback with you when we come back together. And what I've been asking them to do is to come up with priorities. I've been sharing the needs that I've collected. I've asked them to prioritize, and I've also asked them to share any additional items that they didn't see on there that they wanted to add to the conversation. I will tell you that what I'm hearing so far, if you all remember, I shared with you a 3-year plan for salaries. What's happening is some of the groups are bringing up, they want to see their salaries, as you might expect, increase sooner than later. And obviously, as you know, the reason we have to look at a multi-year plan is we're not going to have enough funding to do it all in 1 year. I've also explained to every group, as we've talked about here, we can't continue to do across the board salary increases. We really need to start addressing inequities And I've explained that to every group, but just as sure as I say that, if we address half of the teacher scale, or if we address one particular group of employees, we'll hear from other employees who aren't being addressed at that time. And that's where we need to continue to say, you're not being addressed this year, but there's a plan to address your concerns in the next few years, we'd like to say, but that's all contingent on funding. So I've been sending that message, and I know the board members have as well, and I appreciate your support with that. We know they certainly deserve raises, but we have to look at it long term, and we have to address inequities, or just adding a percentage to those salaries will never fix the concerns that we have. So that's where we are at this point in time, and if there are any questions from the board, I'll be happy to answer those at this time.
The feedback you got from the group about addressing the upper part of the salary scale, did that come, was that from people just at the top level or from the top several levels?
In that particular case, I want to say it would be people who are at the top of the scale was the concern, or very near the top of the scale, because they raised the concern. Because keep in mind, if we haven't done a step increase for the last 3 years, they keep anticipating. Part of that issue too is there's quite an increase. When I say that, the gap is, I want to say close to $5,000 from those last 2 steps, which really is another issue because it's not dispersed throughout the entire scale. But if you're waiting for that $5,000 increase and you're on the cusp of receiving that and you don't get a step increase, then what you find is you have 2, 3, 4 years of waiting and not getting that increase. And then the concern becomes, if we give them a step increase, then you should be giving other people a step increase, and there's a significant cost related to that.
Do you recall how many people fall in that group right now?
We did look at that. Do you have a number? Yeah, we can share that number with you. We can pull that for you. But and our budget book that we do list employees that fall into each step on the teacher scale, and we can certainly provide that for you, because I've asked the same question, because we're looking at pricing these things out. So we're working on that.
Are there other questions for Dr. Cotton?
Have we, in the past, budgeted without the step increases and correct? I know the salary scale was just recently done, but have we budgeted without those step increases in anticipation of the funding I mean, we kind of know what funding we're going to get to some extent from the state, but from our local government, do we budget in anticipation of what they're going to do because of what they've done historically? And if so, why?
Well, I would say a few years ago we started out with budgeting based on the assumption that we would get level funding. And largely that was because we were dealing with several years of shortfalls. When I first came on board, we had about a $2.1 million shortfall. And so walking in the door, we were having to make cuts. Fortunately, that shortfall has become less and less over the last few years, but we have not had an influx of new money coming to us. But the last couple of years, we have budgeted based on needs. We've done more of a needs-based budget. And as a board, we've discussed this and presented that. And then when we present that, we hope that we get that or somewhere near that. And obviously, last year we didn't. We received a portion of it. But the board said very clearly last year we need to do a needs-based budget, ask for what we need, and then go from there.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm getting at. And I definitely think all the teachers in our system, and probably most of us here, would list sticking with our pay scale as a need. Our teachers certainly are going to support that. And I think all of us feel bad that we haven't been able to do the step increases. But all that
Last year, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Cotton, last year when we presented our first budget, our budget to the Board of Supervisors upstairs, we asked for an increase in local funding at that time. And then when the supervisors had their general public hearing, some of us stood up at that time and asked for them to support the full budget as it was presented, which did involve an increase in local funding, but didn't go.
I guess I just feel like that's the message that, I mean, I think we need to ask for what we see as our needs. And what percent, I should know off the top of my head, what percent of our budget is teacher salaries? It's the bulk, correct?
It's the bulk of the budget. It's
80%.
closer to 80% of our overall budget. So the most expensive item, obviously, when you're looking at salary increases, but we're going to look at, I'm going to be working with staff to look at many different scenarios. What I heard from the board, which I think makes sense, is looking at that amount we were projecting for the 1% and seeing how that could be applied to the top half of the scale. Because as you pointed out, Dr. Stanbaugh, at the last meeting, we need to address, that's where we're faltering. When you get to the 15 years, now when we initially were looking at it, we were looking at doing the 1% across the board, and then year 2, addressing those market areas. We did get some estimates from the VAST study. The 1% they estimated roughly at $320,300, but we need to verify that that's accurate with our salaries as they are today. But when they looked at doing the market adjustment for years 16 to 29, they estimated it to be $554,300, and that's for adjusting those years to market. So when we saw that significant cost, we were thinking, let's plan on that for year 2. But certainly, if we want to apply that 1% to the top half of the scale, then we're still moving in the right direction. So certainly, that's something that we'll look at.
Any other questions? Okay, at 6:13, we will begin the public hearing. And prior to that, we do have guidelines for public comment that we'd like to review. Actually, public comment means that we're here to listen to you, not to engage in a debate or question and answer period. If you wish to address the board, come to the podium, state your name, your subject matter, and the district in which you live. The meeting is governed by school board policy and by Virginia state law, and the chairman is charged with enforcing these policies and laws. The speaker must refrain from identifying specific students or personnel and may not make statements that are false, malicious, or slanderous in nature. By coming to the podium, the speakers agree to these conditions and will exhibit respect for the board and its members and will conduct themselves with dignity. And you will receive the same level of respect from the board. And we would ask that you please try to keep your comments to 3 minutes. Do we have speakers for tonight?
We've got some new people in the audience.
I know. I thought maybe all the staff was coming.
This one here is a student of Mr. Arthur, so.
Mr. Vaca.
Not too long, good. Good evening. My name is Joshua Vaca. I am here representing the Henry County Education Association. I also reside in the Ridgeway District. I'm here tonight to speak on the HCEA's position and our members' position on some of the proposals of the budget. First of all, just start off that the HCEA is very pleased to see proposals for 5% increases on paraprofessional staff and their salaries. We're also pleased to see that there is a, talk about a increase in salary for teachers as well. But as Dr. Cotton just mentioned, one of the biggest concerns that we are hearing consistently from our members is the step increases. We hear a lot of people talk about the lack of step increases in the last several years, and they're concerned about their mobility through the salary scale. And it's not just from those who have long service time, but from those who are not as much service time, like myself as well, who have expressed concern about the lack of step raises in the last 3 years. And I've had some teachers, heard them say things like that they look at the salary scale and they look at it almost like it was a promise, and they feel a little bit, when they don't get those step increases, feel almost as if that promise wasn't being kept in them. And that's part of their frustration with the salary freezes that we've had in the last several years. And so what the HCEA would just like to say is that we're just wondering if there is maybe some way, I know in some of the proposals that were put in earlier of not necessarily maybe addressing the salary scale until 3 years down the road, but if there is some sort of way in which we could maybe start addressing that issue a little bit sooner, in order to maybe get some of these issues taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Booker. Are there other speakers? The policeman want to speak? This is the only other one we don't. Okay, we will close the public hearing at 6:18. Are there matters from the board to be brought before the group tonight? Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn the meeting. All in favor, please raise your right hand.